wonderful to be with you all in this wonderful setting. I'm just waiting for my slides to come up. So I'm going to talk to you about ending the Great Stagnation, which is the focus of my research at the Center for Growth and Opportunity. I'm an economist, so I like to start with data. So this is global GDP over the last 2,000 years. And as you can see, humanity has had a pretty good run here in the last 200 especially. So global GDP now is over $100 trillion. And there are economists like Deirdre McCloskey call this the fact of the world. And it's, I think, incredibly impressive when you actually think about, for most of human history, we lived at subsistence, and now we have something different. And so a lot of economists think, like, we used to be poor, and now we're rich. I'd like to challenge that view. So first of all, if we could keep growth going through the end of the century at the rate it's been going since about 1950, by 2100 we would have GDP of $2.4 quadrillion, which is a lot more than 100 trillion. So we are still poor if we take this century-long view, and it's important that growth continues. Now I have some bad news, which is that in the United States, total factor productivity has been stagnating for about 50 years. So if you take sort of the rate of growth that existed before 1973 and project it forward, we are about 50%, we would be twice as rich about if we could have kept growing at the same rate. And this period is called by economists, especially my former colleague Tyler Cowen, my mentor Tyler Cowen, the Great Stagnation. A lot of people don't believe in sort of the economic statistics, especially total factor productivity is a kind of a weird statistic. So I like to look also at physical statistics. If you look at primary energy use per capita in the United States, it's actually declined since the late 1970s. And if we had just grown at the previous rate, which had, you can extend back to about 1800, we would be consuming about 3 times as much energy per person in the US as we do today. Or maybe you want to look at transport speeds. So this is the sort of maximum commercial transatlantic speed that you could do since the advent of transoceanic air travel. And as you can see, we started going up. We got to supersonic speeds in the 1970s, and we no longer have that capability. There's no Concorde anymore. There's no, in fact, no supersonic aircraft at all. And if we just project forward sort of the previous rate of increase, we'd be traveling at about Mach 4 now across the oceans. Or maybe new drug development. So this is how many new drugs you get for every $1 billion in R&D spending on drugs. Now I'm going to do something that's like a little unfair here, which is to take the year before the FDA added an efficacy requirement and just project that forward. There's a lot of things changing. It's probably not fair, but if you take that forward, we have about 20,000 missing drugs in the world because of that change in research R&D efficacy. This is another one I like to cite. High-speed rail construction in the United States versus China. Since 2008, China has rolled out 40,000 kilometers of high-speed rail. The US has rolled out 0. This is in spite of the fact that in 2009, Congress allocated $8 billion to high-speed rail development, and California has added extra money on top of that, and we still have 0 miles of high-speed rail service in the United States. So why are we stagnating? That's the focus of my research. There are a lot of economists who think it's because we have picked the low-hanging fruit, right? As you get richer, as you discover new ideas, it becomes harder to find new ideas. And I don't think that's the answer at all. I don't think that's why we're stagnating. I think it's because we've become unwilling to bear the costs of doing great things. So here are the rules for innovation in America. No one can be inconvenienced, no one can get hurt, and no jobs may be lost. Within those parameters, it's the land of the free. You can do whatever you want. But those are the rules, and here's what they lead to. vetocracy, preemptive safety regulation, and make-work policies. And that is, I think, the crux of why we're stagnating. And let's look at some sectors and see how these three forces apply. So if you look at housing, this is a listing, I think I pulled it last fall, from Palo Alto. This was the cheapest house I could find in Palo Alto at the time. So it's 1,100 square feet, $1.85 million. Why? It's because the neighbors don't want all the construction and they don't want the new development that might lower their property values, right? So it's vetocracy at work. I work a lot on energy policy, and I am surrounded by a lot of nuclear bros, but I'm actually a big fan of geothermal energy because I think it's a massive resource. These are some estimates from Stanford University about the size of the global resource. There's tons of opportunity to tap geothermal energy, which exists everywhere if you drill deep enough. But this is what you have to do to develop geothermal energy in the US. You have to go through what's called a NEPA review, an environmental analysis, and you potentially have to go through NEPA review 6 times to develop a nuclear power plant on federal land in the United States. And it leads to very long duration time periods for the projects, and it makes it hard to turn a profit on some of these plants. There's a lot of exciting innovation going on in transportation in terms of like electric vehicles. Electric motors are getting very reliable and good. Batteries are getting a lot better. Where are we going to get all the battery minerals? We don't mine in the United States. Turns out this is a picture of the ocean floor off the coast of Georgia on the Blake Plateau. And all of these nodules are polymetallic nodules made up of battery metals, manganese, cobalt, nickel. They're just sitting there on the ocean floor. And the US government has not approved any harvesting of these nodules that are just sitting there full of battery metals for ecological reasons. Even though I think it's pretty enumerate, there's huge amounts of ocean floor, obviously. So even if you're disturbing the ecosystem in some places, there's plenty left over. A large chunk of the United States is in the grips of a drought. We could actually solve huge amounts of water shortages throughout the US and in the rest of the world through desalination. To get a sort of Colorado River's worth of additional water in the western United States would take about 2% of US primary energy use, energy being usually what's cited as the limiting factor here. So it's like not actually that much energy use to completely solve drought permanently and forever in the United States. I have a soft spot for faster travel. This is a render of an airplane being developed by a company called Hermeus in Atlanta, and they are developing a Mach 5 airliner. So this would take you, New York to London in about 90 minutes or less. And this is under development. There's huge regulatory obstacles to this coming, but they're working on it and pushing through it. Biologists are getting closer and closer to solving what are the root causes of aging. They're developing drugs and treatments that could potentially, in the short run, just reduce all-cause mortality, which is kind of what people talk about in the longevity industry, and in the long run, like truly reverse aging and make it so that we don't have to age or be older. And that would just, be revolutionary. Instead of being old and frail in your later years, you could be spry and active and maybe live much longer than we do today. And in Texas, a company called SpaceX is starting to open the frontiers of space by making, for the first time, a rocket that is able to get mass into orbit at a fraction of the cost that we've ever been able to do it today. We're on the cusp of maybe making humanity a multiplanetary species. So does this sound like we've picked the low-hanging fruit? There's plenty of innovation to be had, but we keep running into these obstacles. And so my message to you today is that unfathomable abundance is possible, but we have to be willing to bear the costs. Thank you.